Hey, Coach. So I looked through the video of your last game, or at least the game against the Dublin Rhinos, and I do have kind of a suggestion that I would make. Suggestion might be too strong of a word, just an analysis, if that makes more sense. And it has to do with the way you're playing your defensive line and into your linebackers. Now, up here on the board, I've drawn just kind of a mock offense. It may or may not be anything that you'll see. And I've drawn a mock defense, and it may or may not be anything that you'll see, but it'll suffice for what I'd like to communicate. Now, here is what I see happening. I see your defensive line being what we call penetrators. And that means that off the snap of the ball, they are charging forward with their assignments as fast as they can. Linebackers that you bring up into a blitz, same thing. Now, this is a good idea when you're bigger and faster than everybody else, and that the teams in the league seem to be running what we call search. You call it a sidecar. I really like that term, by the way. But there's three things that I'd like to point out about this type of defense that might be something to keep in mind. First, when you're penetrating like this, you do leave yourself open to two things with the offense. First thing is these kind of penetrations, especially by your defensive ends, will open up lanes. Meaning, if this end is just going hell-bent for leather every time the ball is snapped, and he's ending up here, if this tackle is blocked to the inside, we're going to find a lane that can be run through right here. Secondly, if the offense is running anything to the outside and it's run properly, by that I mean the pitch or the swing is done out here rather than in here like the Rhinos did, then that end is going to be too far upfield to be able to set the edge. But here's the last thing that I want to show you. I think penetrating works against this type of offense. And if that's the most common type of offense that they're running in the IAFL, you're going to be okay. But if you get against an offense that likes to pull their guards to kick out, like in a wing T offense, then that end who's running upfield is going to get kicked out very easily. We do that all the time with our offense because every end in Canada runs like you do. And then a down block here, and suddenly there's a huge lane for that running back to run through. Now, the alternative to this, penetrating, is what we run, and it's called a gap control. And in gap control, we get that end and those noses and tackles to literally stop after they've reestablished the line of scrimmage, and then they're looking for business. This allows us to always be able to maintain integrity inside the tackle box, and it allows our ends to be able to still set the edge for anything outside. What it does not give us is a pass rush. That's the cost to this type of defense. Now, what we've come up with this year, and it's worked pretty well, is that our defensive line coach will give the defensive line a signal depending on the down of distance. If he does this, then they know that they're being penetrators and they're just going full go because it's a passing down. If he gives no signal at all, they set in their gaps and they try to either play the run or they set the edge. Sometimes it's a guessing game, but a lot of defense is a guessing and betting game. Take a look at these video clips because I think they'll illustrate what I'm talking about a little clearer. So I wanted to show you some examples of what I was looking at or what we were looking at on the board. And we're going to first start with your team and a couple of things that I saw from this game against the West Dublin Rhinos. Actually, I want to switch over here to Huddle Classic because I'm more comfortable working in that. So bear with me just a second. Okay, like I said, it was pretty clear from the start that you guys were bigger and faster than them. And with that in mind, what you were doing defensively is appropriate. Uh, but I want to show you just a couple of clips of stuff that I saw and a couple of occasions where that penetrating defense left some areas exposed. So I'm going to go to play 13 here, and I'm also going to expand this so we can see all of it, just to show you an example of what I mean. Okay, so they motion over into trips, fine adjustment. Okay, you can really see it both with number 55 and with that defensive end. They've charged straight forward, and I'd say they've gotten about 3 yards deep into the backfield, which is great. Against search offenses, this really screws up any kind of cutting back or really any kind of getting up to the point of attack either. But check this out. What happens if that quarterback kept the ball and he boots back the other way? If he boots back the other way, both 55, who I think was a linebacker, maybe a defensive tackle, but this player with the 4, he was most definitely your defensive end. Your defensive end is completely not in a position to be able to protect against boot or any kind of counter to his side. So for that player, what we teach them constantly, if you see motion away, you have to look for something coming back. Now again, maybe this is a brand new player, maybe they're inexperienced, so running straight forward, that penetrating defense suits them. Let me show you another example. Okay, very next play, play number 14. Let's enlarge the screen. Okay, we're motioning again into trips. You're walking up a linebacker. Okay, it's a pass play. And penetrating defense is great against this, unless, of course, you get pushed pass. This isn't a great example. It's not a great example of what I was talking about earlier, but you can see where that lane opens up because the defensive ends are rushing so far upfield. It looks like this was really kind of the only play that they had in that game. The quarterback was a pretty good athlete. And let me show you one more. This one, I think, was a little bit later, not so much later. Okay, and this, let me enlarge it again. Also something that I talked about in the whiteboard talk is that if you get a team that can really quickly get the ball to the perimeter, like they did on this play, and your defensive end is charging straight up field, the defensive end is not going to be in an angle to work straight down the line of scrimmage and push this wider or set the edge. Now, when they were pitching the ball earlier in this game, they really weren't getting it out to the perimeter properly. And your defensive ends, even though they're penetrating and charging straight up field, were still able to get in on the tackle. But this is a good example. Your defensive end is charging straight up field. They've pitched the ball properly, getting it out onto the perimeter. And he's not in a position where he can play down the line of scrimmage. Okay, now let me show you an example of how we worked with this. And I'm going to need to switch accounts. I'm going to our account now. I'm going to stay in Huddle Classic again because, well, I'm old and that makes me comfortable. We're going to call up your playlist for Dara. Okay, so this is my team, the team here in the white. And the camera angles aren't necessarily as good as yours, but I want to show you 2 plays here. First play is going to be a run off to the offense's right-hand side. And we play it really well. But I want to break down a couple of things for you to see. Now, our defensive line coach has got the boys in gap, which means all I want them doing is stepping across, holding their gap, and reestablishing the line of scrimmage. So here's our defensive end. He's got a wing, so his job is just to step and blow up the bubble. Now, he's engaging the blocker and getting off of the block. You see, he's got some nice space in there, so we're confident he's going to be able to get off of there. But even though he's engaging that blocker, he's in a position where he's staying on the line of scrimmage. And he's actually who makes the tackle on that play. Now, there was another linebacker there who was easily going to clean it up also. But that's our defensive end. But that's really not what I want you to see on this play. What I want you to see on this play is the other defensive end. He's over here. Now, I want you to watch him off the snap of the ball. He's got nobody. He's got nobody to block, and the play is going the opposite way. So what he's doing is he's eyeballing this quarterback. And we start this on day one. And he knows that he is responsible for that quarterback coming back to him. We don't need him joining the party. We need him protecting backside. Let's watch. Let's watch to see what this quarterback does. Let's see if he rolls back on a boot. Sure does. And we need our end to wait until he sees empty hands before he comes over and joins the party. Now, like I said in the chalk and talk, we don't do this all the time. When we get into a passing down, we're going to be sending those defensive linemen and those defensive ends, similar to what you do. Now, it's second down here on the yard marker. Again, remember we're in Canada and we only get 3 downs. So this is second and long. So our defensive line coach has given the go call. And I want you to watch this defensive end. Now that looks like a great play. And, if you also look at this, watch the sideline. Everybody can recognize that that's a huge hit and it's really great for morale. But here's the thing, Dara, it's actually not that great of a play, because if this pitch is done properly, this kid should be getting the ball right about here. And at that point, our defensive end, because he's on this penetration call, is chasing the ball. They've got a man here, and they've got a man coming around who should be getting on a linebacker. Then they've got themselves a pretty good play. So the point is, when you're doing these penetration techniques from the defensive ends or your defensive line, they are good, but your inherent weaknesses are you're opening up a lane, and if anything gets pitched properly to the outside, those defensive ends can't set the edge, but rather they're chasing. Now, I've got one more thing I want to show you. This wasn't my team, but this is another guy in our league, and this is really, really good. This is so well coached. Okay, so watch this. Let me see if we can get this large. Okay, well, see if I can use the tools too, because I'm in huddle, the new huddle, right? All right, so here's what I want you to watch. I want you to watch this end. Sorry. He's in a gap control. He's not going to penetrate. And what this team in red is going to try to do is they're going to try to kick him out. And then they're going to try to run up underneath. Now, against a penetrating defensive end, this is going to work really, really well. But this is not a penetrating end. This is going to be a gap control end. I want you to watch how they play this because this is textbook gap. Wow, that's good. Let's watch it again. It's so well coached and it's so well played. And I'm going to pause on the spot here. It's a little deceiving too. It's a little deceiving, Dara, because this number 92, they start him in a stance, which typically means he's going to be rushing straight in, your rush end. And look at your boundary end. He's in a 2-point stance. You figure that he's going to be just doing gap control and setting the edge. But this kid is setting the edge. Watch him. That's great. Perfect. That's a great example of what I'm talking about. And oh, if he's a brand new player, don't you know he's charging straight forward? Look at the ball. How would he not charge straight forward? But here comes your tackle to kick him out. And this kid has been well coached. Right now, he's saying, oh shit, I'm not an all-star. I've got to step inside. Awesome. I wish that was my defensive end. That's so well coached. Okay, so take it as food for thought. If you're going to run a penetrating defense, the weaknesses inherently are going to be anything that gets pitched quickly and properly to the outside and your off-tackle lanes. Those weaknesses are going to get exploited if the team kicks out with guards or tackles, which is pretty typical for wing T teams. Maybe you won't see many of them. Anyway, let me know what you think.